Well, good morning, everyone. It is right at 8:30, so I thought we would get started. Thank you so much for joining us for our annual HR Trends webinar. Today, we are, just to start with a couple of housekeeping items. At the end, we'll have our panel discussion, and if you have any questions throughout, you can use the Q&A function that is in the bottom on your menu. Submit your questions in there, and we will answer them at the end. If we don't get to your question, we will certainly follow up directly with you with that information. And with that, I'd like to introduce Londa Dewey, QTI CEO, who will lead us through the first portion of our presentation. Londa?
Thank you so much, Jill, and good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to join us today and talk a little bit about top HR challenges for 2024 and some strategies that we may want to employ to go forward and make those challenges opportunities. What we'll be talking about is briefly what's happening in the world around us and how that impacts and informs some of our people strategies. Secondly, we will reveal what the top 3 HR challenges are from our survey that was done this summer. And then that'll be followed by a panel discussion. We have 4 outstanding HR leaders that are joining us today. They will be sharing their perspective. And as Jill said, then if you have questions, please submit your questions in Zoom, and we will answer any questions that we can during this time. If we run out of time, we will send you an email with the answers to your questions in the future. So with that, the world around us impacts our people strategies. So this is important that we as leaders really understand what's going on around us, adjust our strategies to what's going on around us, and then think about how that impacts our people. And there's more to it in terms of what's going on in the economy. Wisconsin unemployment, 2.9%, very low, and it's been very low for a long time. This was an August result. Yesterday, I saw that September results came out at 3.1%, so still very low. Inflation is easing, but still relevant. Increasing interest rates, worker demands, pay, total rewards, flexibility, strikes. Does any of this ring a bell to you? And artificial intelligence, many companies are incorporating AI into their organizations to create efficiencies and to create new opportunities. But what are those opportunities? And there are many challenges as we think about this, and possibly some threats as we think about this. And there are 5 generations currently working in the workforce. And generations have different motivators and respond to different communication styles. So managers really need to think about that and have cross-generational skills in order to be effective. And we've shared what some of those motivators are in this slide. And supply and demand. There are more job openings than there are unemployed workers. And there are fewer people participating in the labor force than before the pandemic. There's a lot of reasons for the decrease in the labor force that are listed here. But lately, in the last, I would say, month or so, with some of the subsidies that came through the pandemic ending, we're seeing more and more people walking into our staffing offices and applying for positions. So there's a possibility that we're starting to see that change in the labor force participation rate. So it's important, again, that we think about the world around us, how that impacts our people, how it impacts our strategy. But also, we want to share with you 2 surveys that happened this summer. One is the Worker Experience Survey, and the other is the HR Trends Survey. And on the next page, you see that we had 225 businesses in Wisconsin and organizations respond to our survey. The survey respondents went across industries, ownership type, as well as organizational size. And this is one of those drum roll slides. The top challenges for 2024, number 1, attracting the right talent. And that was number 1 also in 2023. 2 is improving leadership development. That was actually a number 6 challenge last year, so it's increasing. Number 3 is meeting higher total rewards demand. That was number 2 last year. So enhancing employee engagement was 4, training and developing the workforce was 5, and improving workforce management was 6. We listed these 3 because they're all increasing in challenge from a previous survey. So we're going to dive in to the top 3. We're going to share what the challenge is, some of the data around the challenge, and then a couple strategies as you think about these challenges. The first is attracting the right talent. It is the third consecutive year that it is the #1 HR challenge, and 92% of our HR Trend Survey respondents rate it as a moderate or to significant challenge for 2024. And 61% of the HR Trend Survey respondents ranked recruitment or retention as their top priority for 2024. As we think about attraction, it really starts with retention and engagement, because if you can retain your employees, you don't have to attract as much new talent. And if you can engage employees and have a great culture, that really helps to attract the talent that you want. Employee expectations and flexibility, we'll talk about a few strategies related to that, and then some attraction strategies. So first, with retention and engagement, 46% of employees would leave a job due to their culture. And that came from our worker survey, 46%. So if you think of a company culture, that's really the shared values, the attributes, the characteristics of your organization. So you want to make sure that it's an organizational culture that really embraces the employee experience. 41% of organizations are experiencing higher turnover than the previous year. And 37% of HR survey respondents state that their employees are highly engaged. Now that 37% compares to a Gallup percentage last year in 2023 of 31%. So I would say our Wisconsin employers have a higher, or at least the people that participated had a higher engagement score, which is very positive, but it's super important. And you think 37% isn't very much. Well, it's an opportunity for improvement, but it's also important because those organizations with high engagement have a 21% increase in profitability than those that don't. It's important. If you go to the next page, we collected top resignation reasons. Super interesting from an employee perspective: work-life balance, culture, and compensation. From an employer perspective, it was career development, compensation, and retirement. What's interesting to me is a couple things. Number one is compensation wasn't in the top 3 a couple years ago, and it has emerged in the top 3. Second thing that's interesting is compensation is the only thing that is similar between these charts. And it says to me that we as employers really need to take time to understand the employee perspective and why employees are resigning and what we can do about that. If you look at the next slide, 70% of the variance in team engagement is determined solely by the manager. And so what can the manager do? Well, one is to make recognition a regular agenda item. I think this is a little bit more challenging in a hybrid environment, so you need to be intentional about this. Show employees you care. Advocate for employees' ideas. Commit to and provide feedback in employee development, and really understand what's getting in their way and how can you as their manager eliminate those barriers. And think about the focus and key drivers of engagement. So in the past, it was about my paycheck. Today, it's about the purpose of the organization. It went from satisfaction to development. It went from my boss to my coach, from my annual review to my ongoing conversation, from my weaknesses and how do I improve to my strengths and how do I leverage, from my job to work-life balance and flexibility. So the future and the employees today are looking for these attributes in their employment experience. And prioritizing an employee experience, 80% of our survey respondents said that a great employee experience is a strategic priority, which is fantastic. What's interesting is only 25% of organizations have a defined employee value proposition. So while it's a priority, there's an opportunity to formalize the employee experience and what that means, and what is your action plan around creating that and then articulating that to your employees through the value proposition. And 90% of our trend survey organizations have and will continue to offer remote work arrangements. Although I would say if you look at the next slide, so 10%, like I said, no remote work is permitted. But the rest of those organizations have a variety of remote work policies. And I would say with every organization that I speak to, it's an evolving remote work policy, and trying to really understand what works for the organization and what works for the people. If you go to the next slide, we want to focus on, okay, so flexibility is here to stay. More and more companies are encouraging employees to come back to the office. But how do we do that and embrace flexibility? So to me, the first step is to ask your employees, what do you like about remote work and what gets in your way? What do you like about being in the office and what gets in your way? And based upon those simple questions, really think about what is the right policy and adjust based upon those results. And once you adjust, set those expectations and give a purpose for coming to the office. If you go to the next slide, the top reasons for coming into the office is enabling collaboration, and this came from our survey. Well, that totally makes sense to me. It's a lot easier to collaborate when you're in person, but that means you have to be intentional, and that means everybody needs to be in the office at the same time. I can't tell you the number of times that I've had meetings with people and they've said, you know, I came to the office today and I'm on Zoom all day, so it didn't really matter. So you need to be intentional about who comes in and when they come in. And it really enables culture, as well as in a lot of businesses, especially in manufacturing settings, you need to be present in order to operate the business. So flexibility, I think, is here to stay. And it's also important for retention in DEI. 90% of employees who identify as female, caregivers, LGBTQ+, or as having a disability consider flexible work option an important factor when deciding whether to stay or leave in their job. So what are some of the keys to attracting higher quality candidates? So one is to be prepared before you recruit. So we're in the recruiting business, and we often get phone calls from organizations that say, okay, I've been trying to recruit for this position and I haven't been able to be successful with this. Can you help us out? And we absolutely are excited to jump in and help them out. When we start asking questions, what we find is that organizations really need to think about the opening as a new opportunity. It's not just filling the skill set that they had in the past, or maybe it is, but oftentimes they need to think about their future strategy and what are the skills and requirements of the job for the future and the future strategy versus the past. Then everybody needs to be on the same page. So if the hiring manager and the other people that are important, that have a voice in the process, are not on the same page, it's very difficult to select a candidate. So we spend a lot of time with our clients, and it doesn't take a ton of time, but we start the process by preparing before we recruit. And then it goes very smoothly. And then align your communications with your purpose, because that's what attracts people today. Have a user-friendly application. Many people are applying on their phones. Provide prompt and personalized communications and let all candidates know their status. And that says all. And I think it's really important to reach out to everybody that applies for a position because they may be a client or they may be related to somebody that's an employee. People, you just need to give a quick note to say, got your application and whatever the status is of that application. And act fast. Oftentimes you meet this awesome candidate and you say, well, I want to meet 2 or 3 other people to make sure that this is really the right one for me. Well, if you do that, oftentimes that first candidate gets another job. So if you find somebody that you think you want to hire, act fast and you'll have more success. Provide clear instructions for your interviews, be respectful, use technology for efficiencies, keeping the process consistent is important. And remember that the candidate experience continues through the employee experience. And a few more attraction strategies to expand the talent pool. We're seeing more and more organizations, including our own organizations, really focus on the competencies for a job and then not just having experience in the industry, but how do they take the competencies and train the skills that are necessary for the job? And also upskilling and reskilling of current employees is a strategy that we're seeing in a lot of places. 83% support reskilling in our survey. And related to DEI initiatives, you have to really be genuine about your DEI and inclusion. 70% of organizations reported finding qualified diverse candidate as their biggest obstacles. So again, reclassifying requirements and having a broader, having fewer requirements will allow for a larger and broader talent pool to come in for your jobs. And then using a contingent workforce, 67% of organizations have some percentage of their workforce comprised of contingent workers. And that provides a lot of flexibility for the ebbs and flows of business. So that was a little bit about attraction strategies, starting with retaining and engaging your employees, really understanding employees' expectations and embracing flexibility, and then putting in place some attraction strategies that might be different today than they were in the past. The second HR challenge is improving leadership development. An 84% rate improving leadership development is a moderate to significant challenge for 2024, and it's a 12% increase over last year. And it was in the number 6 spot before. I mentioned that before, and now it's number 2. 70% of C-suite executives are stressed, with nearly 70% considering resigning. That headline really caught my attention from Hogan, who is one of our great partners. I was wondering about that. So I looked at some other research actually yesterday that said that 64% of C-suite executives, probably one person in the C-suite, will resign within the next 12 months. That's a scary statistic for me if you don't have your succession planning process in place. And then some things you can do to reduce that kind of turnover is all about improving leadership development. So let's talk about that a little bit. We're going to talk about assessing potential and performance, formal training, strategic action projects, coaching, and mentoring. So starting with leadership development helps improve financial performance, just like engagement does. It helps to attract and retain talent, drive strategy, and increase success in navigating change. So a lot of organizations use a 9-box where you think, and it's somewhat subjective, about the potential of an employee and the performance of that employee. And you put them in one of these 9 boxes. The ones that are shaded green is where you're going to focus most of your leadership development activity and time. And if you go to the next page and you pair your 9-box with an assessment, we use the Hogan set of assessment for and the Leadership Forecast series, because this is a really in-depth assessment that really helps a leader understand how they can succeed by gaining strategic self-awareness, how they can leverage their strengths, avoid behaviors that get in their way, and really gaining insight into the culture that they would create for their team. We can also pair that with a high potential report that helps to determine leadership effectiveness, leadership emerging, and leadership foundational skills. And between these reports, you can identify what are those areas of strengths and what does a leader need to focus their development plans on. And once they do that, it really works. And on the next page, if you pair this with a 360-degree feedback, it is most effective. The 360-degree feedback gives a simple way for managers, peers, and direct reports to provide feedback to a leader, and ultimately providing that holistic view so they can understand their self-management, their relationship management, how they are working in the business, and how they are working on the business. So if you pair that 360 with the leadership assessment, you can come up with some very rich thoughts on what the leadership development priorities should be. Informal training is always an option, and I love going to industry gatherings because I think you can learn a lot about what's happening and where the industry is going and what adjustments you need to make. Certification programs are fabulous, and there are so many of them. And for emerging leaders, there's a lot of training around foundational skills, whether it's communication, problem solving, decision making, and so on. But the most important thing, if you do engage in formal training, is to practice as well as have the leader's leader reinforce it and coach around that formal training. The next is quiet hiring. So we've heard a lot about quiet quitting. I'm not going to talk about that today. I'm going to talk about quiet hiring, and that's where we provide new opportunities for existing employees. When an employee can take on a new role or responsibility with a company due to a need. And 80% of workers report to being quiet hired, and 63% see that as an opportunity to take on a new role. It can really help engagement as well. In coaching and mentoring, we talked earlier about going from an annual performance review to an ongoing conversation. And here's some kind of structure that really works. If you start out with an employee by inventorying strengths, really covering strengths, talents, accomplishments, and how do you leverage those strengths in the current job? Then you talk about what do you start doing, stop doing, and really continue doing, and really the what and how behind that. And that can be a robust conversation about the specific job. And then create a plan. The plan can be about leveraging the strengths, identifying areas that you want to improve, and also some of the development and progression opportunities that that employee has. And then follow that with check-ins and reinforcement related to progress on the plan. There are many other formats that you can use for performance review, but I think if we simplify it and really think about it as an engaging conversation, we can go further faster. So that's a little bit about improving leadership development, assessing potential and performance, formal training, strategic action projects, as well as coaching and mentoring. The third challenge is meeting higher total reward demands. And this is the third year that this is one of the top 3 challenges. 82% of our survey respondents rated as moderate or significant, and 46% of our survey respondents rank compensation benefit planning as one of their top 3 initiatives for the coming year. So let's talk about compensation, benefits, and well-being. Related to compensation, this is kind of a busy slide, but it says a lot. From an employer perspective, we provide our employees with compensation, base pay, incentives, bonuses. We provide benefits. We provide career progression and a career opportunity and work life. From an employee perspective, they look at their compensation as value, their value. They look at benefits as financial security. They look at their career as how am I developing my future value, and then work life related to my quality of life. So I think it's important that we really think about both the employer perspective and what the employer needs and the employee perspective and bring them together in a very powerful way. Compensation. The top 3 rewards trends are number 1. There was a 51% of our respondents saying that they're paying a living wage, and that was up from 43% last year. In Dane County, it's a bit over $16 for an individual and $25 for a family. And so we're seeing an increase in that commitment to paying a living wage. Number 2, 47% employees receive an individual total reward statement. I think this is a best practice because employees don't really understand the investment companies and organizations are making in benefits and paying them for time away, whether sick or on vacation or whatever. And I think it's a real eye-opening discussion relating to what the total rewards are that a company is providing for that individual. 47% of companies provide that. I think there's an opportunity for improvement there. And 36% say that employees know why they're paid and what they are paid. Again, an opportunity. So another drum roll slide. 2024, what are companies and organizations planning for their salary increase? The pool this year is at 3.45% in the median. And that is consistent with what was planned for last year. Although when we asked last year, what did companies actually do? It was 4.1%. And I'm not surprised that it was over 4% for last year. And I'm also not surprised that this year's median planned increase is a little bit less than last year, because that is something that I'm seeing in a lot of different studies. What is interesting to me is if you look at the chart on the right with all the different industries listed, you can see what the actual salary pool was for 2023 and then what is planned for 2024. So you can see a lot of variety amongst industries, but also you can see a big difference in some cases between 23 and 24. And I think that that says something about some of the economic factors affecting different industries. And there was a 69% of our respondents are experiencing pay compression. You have to pay people to attract talent more than some of the incumbents are being paid. And 60% are addressing this through pay increases. And we're seeing a lot of inquiries coming in through our compensation consulting business to update market data because they want to make sure there's internal equity when they bring on a lot of new talent. If you look at the next core benefits, benefits are still super important. And the most important benefits, health insurance, paid time off, retirement, disability, dental, vision, life. But what is emerging is flexibility, as we talked about before. And 20% more employers are experiencing an increase in benefit cost year over year than our study last year. So there's more employers experiencing more increase in cost, and 55% of sharing those increased costs with their employees. And some organizations are looking to modernize some of their benefits. And here's a list of some really creative benefits. One of my favorites is a dream bonus, where a company provides $1,500 a year that's used for an experience that the employees might not have been able to do or afford or wouldn't have done otherwise. Or sabbaticals, or paid fertility treatments, or community involvement, or flat day rate arrangement. There's a lot of different types of benefits that organizations are looking at to enhance their library of benefits. And more than 1 in 3 companies have a plan to increase their mental health programs, which is an 8% increase over last year. And there are many ways through health and wellness programs, EAP, education, as well as clinics to help employees. Wellness and work-life balance. This interesting quote from the Harvard Business Review: the line between work and home is blurred. 60% of workers were more stressed in 22 than they were at the peak of COVID. And that kind of makes sense to me, since at COVID, we just worked at home and there weren't a lot of other distractions that were going on. But now we're trying to adjust to the new world of flexibility. So today we've talked about a lot. The top 3 challenges: attracting the right talent, improving leadership development, as well as meeting higher total reward demands, and shared some different strategies for you to consider. But now we've got some experts joining us. We have 4 panelists. We have Jamie, Dawn, Lauren, and Jessica. And I'll ask that you put your videos on, and I am going to start by asking you some questions, and then if you all in the audience have questions, please put it in the Q&A, and we will hope to get to those. But the first question that I'm going to ask the same one of all of you, which is, and I'll start with you, Dawn, and that is, what do you see as the most significant challenge for HR leaders as you look to 2024, and maybe what are some of your priorities to address that?
I believe that it's going to be the ongoing struggle with retention and recruitment, and especially in the skilled labor sector of our business. And there's a host of things that we're doing. We've created a training program that we refer to as the ACP program, which is Advanced Careers in Print. So when an individual comes in an entry-level position, and even without any experience in our industry, they're provided a mentor machine side, and then that mentor works with them on textbook content that we've created that helps them to learn that position. It's a reference point for them to go back to if they've forgotten something and they don't want to go back to their mentor, or they just want to study outside of that. We also have classroom content that accompanies that, and then our department managers will meet with those individuals and go through the career ladder booklets that we've developed that shows where an individual started out at entry level, the competencies that they need to become proficient in, kind of talk through where the managers feel they're at with that, what they need to do to become more competent, and then they can continue to advance and move up. So if I start using our press room as an example, a third press operator is entry level. It will show them what they need to learn to be a full third press operator, then what they need to start to learn to move into that second press operator position, and then to the first. And it shows, career ladder progression that's even outside of the press room. And we provide examples of individuals that have gone on to maybe be our scheduler, or, a customer service rep, or things like that. And it really allows us to work with those team members to help them develop in areas that they have of interest.
That is fantastic. I bet that really works, and to retain employees as well. Dawn, thank you very much. Jessica, I'm going to ask you the same question. What do you see as the most significant challenge for 2024, and what are some of your priorities to address it?
Yeah, so similar to a lot of the, content that was shared in the survey, I think one of our significant ones that we learned from our engagement survey from last year too was really development. And, we've got a lot of large objectives coming up in 2024 from a wide variety of different areas throughout the company and just really wanting to grow. And so how do we really focus on, intentional development? We've always had leadership development. We've always had development programs, but it's really to get at what some of the survey said too, is just really intentional. So a couple of the things that we've been really looking at is, for leadership development, we've utilized Franklin Covey for a lot of our leadership programs in the past. We've used Hogan as well in a couple of different assessments. And so, we're going to try a couple different things this year and actually kind of have, I would say, more focused type groups with our leaders, maybe some more role playing and just talking through. So, 15 minutes on a topic of discussion that's really relevant to leadership development, and then really having 30 to 40 minutes potentially on just dialogue. How do we really, get them talking to each other and really solving problems together? We are establishing a future leader development program as well. So something similar to like doing the 360s. Typically, we've used it for our leaders overall. We're really focused on those future leaders to really identify those, get them, really skilled up and really excited about leadership as a whole. We are doing some more intentional coaching. So we do have some, options that we've done in the past, but we're being more selective about that and really helping those future leaders really, how do we help them with their coaching overall? We're establishing more of a mentorship program as well, which we've had somewhat, in the past. But again, it's all about being a little bit more intentional and dedicated to it than we have in the past. And so, just trying to come up with different ways of just, creating, development throughout and really skills, and developing skills. So certifications and things like that are also huge, and, professional designations and things are really a huge focus as well. So a lot of different opportunities, but just really a main focus on development from hearing from what our employees were really looking for as well.
That's great, Jessica. Thank you very much. And Jamie, would you like to answer the question about the most significant challenge and what some of your strategies are?
Yeah, and it's also some of the stuff that you talked about on the survey results too. Some stuff that we're seeing, and I'm sure other organizations are seeing as well, is that we are slowly losing a very important generation in our organizations. And that generation has a wealth of knowledge that we need to pass along to newer generations coming into the workforce. And so if you don't do that, there could be a really large skills gap. So we have also put together a mentorship program similar to what some other folks had said, and that has really helped us. We do have career paths as well that lay out exactly, your positions and compensation too, that go along with, as you go up the ladder there. So putting that together has really helped us. I will say that we have struggled a little bit with some of the baby boomer generation, not exactly always wanting to take newer generations under their wing. It is a new way of doing things. When baby boomers were learning themselves, it was kind of like, hey, figure it out. And now newer generations are looking for a little more direction and a little more feedback. So we have put together kind of some focus groups with those mentors, trying to engage them and make them really feel like we value their input. That has really helped kind of bring them along into that mentorship program. So it's just really getting newer generations ready to take in those roles, identifying internal talent and external talent for those gaps.
That's fantastic, Jamie. I see a common theme here in terms of development. Now I see why leadership development was number 2 on our survey. That's fantastic strategies that you all have. And Lauren, you might want to describe what Tandem HR does in terms of working with multiple employers, but also what are some of your thoughts in terms of significant challenges that you see for 2024, not only within your organization, but also through your customer base, and then what are some of your priorities?
Yeah, so we work with a wide range of clients across various industries. So I don't just see this for one particular business, but like I said, the gamut. Retention, like you talked about, Linda, the struggle with attracting to your brand and your organization can be mitigated if you can retain the current base that you have and focus on a strong culture. What we've really been working with our clients on and really encouraging them is what I guess I'll call some of the foundational pieces of retention. Do you have a one-to-one structure? Do you have one-to-ones with your team? Are you focused on that to help them, share what their stucks are, share what they need support on, also share what they're proud of? It can be really uncomfortable for employees to share that, but if you're asking them those questions, using those one-to-ones to really help the employee develop and gain what they need, rather than use it as a chance for you to, kind of have a checklist on projects. And then stay interviews. So building a cadence and a routine to talk to your current employees, ask questions, don't wait until that exit interview when it's too late to have change happen, but really use stay interviews as a way to help connect, get that perspective. You'd be amazed at what a couple quick questions, what insight you would gain from that.
That's fantastic. Well, great insight. And I loved your comment about what your stucks and what are you proud of. That's a great way to frame that. Next question that I have for all of you is, how has artificial intelligence affected your organization and your HR strategies? And Dawn, I'll start with you again.
We have not really utilized AI at this point, but we are starting to explore how that might be able to assist us with our recruitment and, creation of job descriptions and our communication back and forth with candidates.
Those are great tools, and they're evolving every day.
Right.
Jessica, what about you?
Yeah, very similar. I think we're starting to explore it a little bit more. I know that our marketing team has been using AI in their day-to-day, just from a perspective of, designing different materials and things like that, and just getting content from AI. From an HR perspective, similar to Dawn, we've started to look at for, content for job descriptions and different ways of saying different, skill sets and things like that. And then I think also just looking at, when we've been updating our policies for more flexibility and things, asking questions similar to that as well, and getting some additional content to share within our policies and just kind of flexibility for procedures and things as well.
That's interesting. And what about you, Jamie?
Same. We also have not really taken the step into AI yet, but I do serve as the president-elect on the Dodge County SHRM chapter. And some things that we're hearing through SHRM is just our world as HR professionals are really, really going to change in the next couple of years through the use of AI. So I have done some personal research on it. I would encourage others to do the same. And it's just the new world that we live in. So I guess we just need to be prepared for it.
And Jamie, thank you for cheering SHRM and Dodge County. That's fantastic. What are you most excited about when you do your research about AI? And then what are you most scared about?
Most excited about how it can streamline processes and make things more efficient. Most scared about the scammers, hackers, any kind of cyber crime that might come with it.
That makes a tremendous amount of sense. And Lauren, what about you? How are you incorporating AI?
I feel like I'm very similar to these ladies. Early on our journey, you can't turn your head one way and not hear AI, but really starting to use in our recruiting. So with job descriptions, with postings, with some of that content creation has been very helpful. One example I'll give though is like using generative AI. I was at a conference and wanted to post a LinkedIn post, and after a long day, I just had writer's block. And I put it in an AI and it helped me generate it. So I think even just taking those tasks that, how do you take a 2-minute task and make it 30 seconds? Because when you magnify that and when you add that up, it can make a really big difference in that task support.
Well, it's a great comment. I'm going to move on to some talent attraction strategies, and that was our number one challenge. And Jamie, I think I'll start with you. What are some of the unique tools or strategies that you use to attract talent?
Sorry, I'm trying to find my mute button.
No worries.
We've done a lot in the last couple of years here at Matera. I joined the organization May of 22, so I've been here a year and a half now. What I was told is that the culture here was pretty poor about 5 years ago. And it was just a matter of getting the right leaders in the right positions to kind of take it to another level. And the culture here is just amazing. For me to take a role here, I came from an organization that I didn't feel was a very good culture or work environment. So for me to take a new job somewhere, that was very important to me in order to do my job well. And I'm happy to say that that has held true a year and a half later. So that's a really big thing in itself. And that was part of what you talked about on your survey was culture, work environment. You know, how are you engaging with your team members? We've done a lot of really simple, basic things to make it a good place to work. I mean, the smallest thing goes a long way with employees. You can give them a box of cookies and they will be over the moon excited, you know? So we actually did a survey with our employees last year, just asking them, what do you want? Like, what do you want to see? And getting their input was really, really helpful. You know, it was simple things like we want to have more cookouts, or we want to have a Halloween costume contest, an ugly sweater contest. We want to have more giveaways. We want to wear your favorite sports team day. We want a hunting contest, you know, so simple things that, you know, you can easily do. And so we've implemented a lot of that, and we've seen a lot of really, really good responses from it. We also have kind of broadened our language barrier issues a little bit. So we have a large Spanish employee workforce here. And so we send them to Moraine Park during their working hours to take English as a second language class, pay them their wage to do it. It has really opened up to the Hispanic community for us, which has been really great. And yeah, I think a lot of it's word of mouth for us. Culture, the things that we're doing internally, our turnover rate is really low, which we're proud of. And like I said, it didn't used to be that way here. So it's exciting that we've been able to turn our culture around.
Well, great job. Those are all really good ideas. That's fantastic. And Dawn, do you want to share some of the tools or strategies you use maybe in attracting new talent?
We mirror a lot of what Jamie said, you know, really focusing on our culture. We have done that for the 22 years that plus, you know, that I've been here. And, you know, it very much is the little things that you do, the recognition that you do, but we also partner with external groups where we're trying more and more to get the message of skilled trades out to the youth. Like Made in Dane, as an example, is an organization that we're part of, and it's a group of HR professionals within Dane County. And we work with some other outside agencies to help really promote those skilled trades and try to get that information down into the high schools and you know, let them know that there's lucrative careers without you having to go to college, and or partnering with, you know, Madison College in terms of, you know, promoting those trades and having students attend classes, and also working at the same time. A couple of years ago, we had our first electrical apprentice. So we pay, you know, him to go to school. He's been a great advocate for us in terms of that program and how that's really benefited and rewarded him from a learning and a compensation perspective, and not going into debt with, you know, having student loans and things of that nature. We also will have different organizations come in and we set up panel discussions where we'll take a group of our team members and have them really talk about their experience. And those organizations will bring in potential candidates. A lot of times that's within the Latino population or other underserved population groups. And, you know, they hear firsthand from our team members in terms of where they started, where they're going, and how they're developing, what they like about our organization, and really encourage them to join our team.
Those are all great ideas. Well, thank you for sharing that, Dawn. I'm going to move to the next question, and that is, and it's also about attracting talent. Jessica, this one is for you. How does offering remote or hybrid work affect your talent attraction strategies?
Yeah, I would say absolutely. We've actually been testing this a little bit just recently as to, you know, we're in Dane County, so starting there and just looking at, you know, having the positions available for the first, you know, couple of weeks of recruitment overall, and just the Dane County area, then expanding out and just really kind of looking at, you know, our local areas, and then looking at broader than that. But then I think since we are, you know, that hybrid mix is really allowing that to continue. And I think we get a lot more candidates that actually come, you know, kind of across the country to really, you know, apply for different positions. So it is something that, I think it does really affect that overall. We've been talking about, though, do we start doing some interviews in the office? We have not been doing that since the pandemic. And so how do we start bringing some individuals back into the office? How do we have some training programs to bring them back into the office? We do, from a remote workplace, we do offer, 2 all-employee meetings a year where people can come and engage with their team members. We cover the cost for those that are out of state and things like that as well. So just how, getting them a little bit more involved in, the office overall and engaged with the company in general.
Well, that's great. And Lauren, do you use remote or hybrid work as a way to attract talent?
Yes, absolutely. And we do see a difference, positions that are primarily or solely in office versus positions that do have some remote flexibility or options, hybrid options. The data supports it. The applicants really are different. I totally understand that doesn't work for every industry. But in some industries that are more niche or, it's hard to find a qualified person in a specific industry within a 50-mile radius of a location. So it has just opened up, when people are casting a wider net across the United States, it's enabled employers to hire the right talent.
Well, that's great. We have a question from somebody in our audience about hybrid and remote, and I want to share this question, and then whoever wants to answer it, if nobody answers it, I'll call on one of you, but I'm sure you all have advice on this, and I'll truncate the question and say they're in the process of bringing their corporate employees back into the office, a minimum of 16 hours a week. They're getting a lot of pushback from areas in their business, including their HR team, who enjoy working remote. But they've had their core business and operations. They've never worked remote, and they've been in the office every day since the pandemic. So what suggestions do you have? And then what has been your experience of the positive change when you bring people back to the office that doesn't affect the culture negatively?
I can start off on this one. I agree with what you said earlier, Alonda. It has to be intentional. I have had that same conversation so many times of I came into the office and I sat in my cubicle and I was on Zoom meetings all day. There was no collaboration. So I think it's really up to the employer to make sure to build those opportunities for collaboration, to create that setting and to communicate that. I think communicating that why is so important, saying, oh, you need to get back in the office because it needs to be fair, or, you've had this flexibility for too long, whatever it might be, that people aren't going to buy that. And so I think there really needs to be upfront communication on the why, and the employer really putting some parameters in place to drive collaboration with people in the office.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to add, I think too, it is just, kind of that phased approach into how do you, when we all went back, starting to go back into the office, it's the clothing that you wear, it's just getting ready, and it's the commute that you're not used to having. So having that a little bit, extra time to phase it in, if they are asking, employees to start coming back, it's a shift. And it's, it's hard for individuals to go from, wearing shorts and a t-shirt every day to actually changing and driving to the office where there's traffic again, which you're not always used to. So I think phasing it in and, setting expectations along the way and actually having it kind of a longer plan overall will be helpful.
So, many of you have already done this, and you've had some success with it, and, you've gotten some positive feedback. So I think it takes 3 weeks to change a habit. So, it takes a few weeks for people to get used to getting in their car and driving into work and remembering which way to go and where to park. But with that said, what are some of the positive feedback that you've received from employees that you've brought back into the office? Jamie, do you want to take that one?
We actually don't have any people who have come back, so I don't have any input on that.
Okay. All right.
Well, most of our people are in-house, and there's 3 that work remotely that have not come back.
Okay. Do others have comments? Lauren?
Yeah, I can share. This is a passion point of mine, so I'll try to be brief on it. But we have a mental health crisis in our country. And so I think for a lot of people, loneliness is at an all-time high. And so I think for some people, work can be their spot. That can be the place where they go and they feel comfort, and where they have maybe some of that only interaction that they have. So I think that's the positives that I've seen is there's some people that have said, wow, I didn't realize how much I needed this, or I didn't realize how much I was struggling. That camaraderie, that friendship, has really been important to their mental health.
That's great. And I'm going to add to that energy too. I mean, the feedback that I get when I see people that have come back and haven't seen people for a while is how much they enjoy that interaction, that informal interaction, and the energy that comes from that. Dawn, do you have anything to add to that?
Like Jamie, we really do not have a lot of individuals that work remotely. If we do, it's salespeople that are stationed in various locations throughout the United States. We did allow individuals to work remotely several days a week. We've kind of reined that in and tried to make that 1 day a week, and we've tried to keep a Monday and a Friday open, because it's the start of the week and we can organize that week better. And then at the end of the week, we can wrap up. We're a 24/7 operation. So we also have to be prepared for what is going to occur during those weekend shifts. And that collaboration and the ability to be in-house and talk about, what issues might be presenting themselves during the weekend really helps us set up our operations team for the weekend work. So there's been a bit of a pushback, but I think as people are becoming more accustomed to, a day remote versus 2, and it not being a Monday, Friday. And we also offer flexibility in that. We understand that there's things that arise where people might still need a Monday or a Friday for that. So, it's a process right now is what I would say, but for the most part, people are getting accustomed to that and enjoy the fact that you can get up and walk and talk to the person that's in the office next to you than having to pick up the phone and wait to see if you can hear them, or doing a Zoom or a Teams call as well. So it's that more personal approach, kind of like Jamie was talking about.
Oh, that's great. Well, thank you. That's all great advice. I'm going to move on to a couple of questions on the meeting higher total reward demands. I'm going to start with you, Jamie. What compensation or total rewards offering are you seeing employees asking most frequently about?
Surprisingly, I'm seeing a lot of people asking about 401k. And our match is not the best, just in full transparency. So working on trying to up that is something that they're really interested in. And I will say just, spot bonuses here and there, just giveaways, like nothing totally big. Our wages are pretty competitive, which we're proud of. They didn't used to be. So that has just really raised the bar for us. And so I would say 401k, just general benefit stuff. And yeah, it's really just, can I get a bonus here and there, Christmas bonuses or little perks?
Okay, that's fascinating. Lauren, what about you? What compensation or total rewards offering are you seeing employees asking most frequently about?
Yeah, this is kind of a stretch, but I want to bring it up. I think flexibility as a reward is what we're hearing a lot of. And that doesn't just mean remote work, but flexibility, in benefits and in work-life balance, things like that. But the other thing I'll share that we have been surprised by the reception of is we offer our clients an earned wage access tool. To where employees don't have to wait 2 weeks or whatever the pay cycle is, to receive a portion of their earned wages. With very little marketing, we have been so surprised in a positive way of the usage. That there was a Forbes article recently, and I can't remember the statistic, but it was more than 50% of employees wanted access to their funds. It's why the gig economy has been so, we've seen such a sharp increase, that they want access to those funds without having to wait for payday. So it has been a really good recruitment tool, hopefully retention tool, that we have that option, especially for lower paying jobs, that they don't have to wait for payday to get the whole paycheck.
Interesting. That's fascinating. And Jessica, do you have anything to add in terms of what employees are asking about in terms of total rewards?
Yeah, we hear a lot about financial and 401k as well. So we've actually established, at least a quarterly, and then we have consultants that come on and to help, employees with their personal financial planning overall and just provide recommendations. We've been on a journey, as Londa knows, of changing our total rewards program overall for many years now, and just enhancing it, right? I mean, so one of the additional pieces that we rolled out a couple of years ago was our choice program, where it is actually It's kind of been simplified through the years, but it provides money into an account for employees to just go and use for if they wanted to do, a gym membership, for instance, because we heard a lot of different things around that. They wanted to use it for, for additional education towards, some classes and things like that. They could use that. So that's been really, I think, beneficial overall.
That's great. And Dawn, anything to add related to what you're seeing employees ask about related to total rewards?
No, I would echo a lot of the sentiments that have already been shared and really focus on some of the things that Jamie said too. We do bonuses, especially around the holidays, and people really look forward to that. They look forward to our cookouts and all those little touch points that, are just continual recognition of their efforts and appreciation for what they're doing throughout the year. So I think it's just continuing with a lot of those things. And of course, people will always take more income, but it's really giving them the understanding of the culture and the education and the whole total picture of what the company offers, not just a competitive wage, which, has to be the basis point for where you start.
Absolutely. So it's the big things and the little things that all matter. That's great. Well, I'm going to ask everybody one more question and give you each just a short amount of time to answer. And that is, it's actually a two-part question. One is, what is one piece of advice that you would give to an HR leader as they look to 2024? And then if you want to add in any podcasts or articles that you look to, there was a question about anything related to AI or podcasts that you listen to learn about coming trends. So piece of advice and what you listen to. Lauren, you want to start?
Yes, the piece of advice I would give is to listen. And I know that seems so basic, but really to listen. I think it's so easy to, especially with amazing data like this, to want to go back and start to already enact change and look at what things might be done differently. But listen, really to understand, ask questions, understand what your staff wants. So ask questions and listen. I listen to a lot of podcasts, but the one I really like is called Good Morning HR. There are HRCI and SHRM credits, which is a plus when you listen to it, but he does a really good job. The host does a really great job of just talking about trends, having difficult conversations and approaching tough topics that we all need to continue to learn about in HR. So that's one I would recommend.
That is fantastic. Jessica, your piece of advice and what do you listen to learn?
So I echo Lauren's comment around listening. That was going to be one of my answers as well. And just along with that is just the ability to and really willingness to learn, right? I mean, so to really think about, what you're hearing from employees, and you may not be able to accommodate any asks, but just continue to learn and just explore different opportunities, explore different areas to really grow and change overall. And then I would say one place that I really find a lot of content is through Gartner HR. So they have some coffee chats that are every week. So I do attend those as well, which is they really focus on. And one of the things I found really interesting in an article of theirs is really driving that purpose. So how do you really connect people through a common purpose to really feel that engagement throughout the organization? So that's really been helpful.
That's great. Dawn, what piece of advice would you provide?
I would echo a lot of the same sentiments about listening and understanding really what the team is looking for. And I think that that's all around culture, right? So it's really important to continue to develop that culture and really have more of a sense of community, which is what we describe at Royal, so that you do know what people are looking for and you can be proactive with providing that. I would also say that training programs are really critical for that, to give people a career pathway so that they understand that there's mobility and upward movement and they don't have to go someplace else to get that. We had spoke earlier, about that retention piece being really more important than even the recruitment piece. And I really believe in that. In terms of podcasts, I wouldn't say that I have any one that I go to. I will periodically listen to one. I just listened to one yesterday through LinkedIn on AI, so if there's something that piques my interest, I'll quickly jump onto that and I'll listen to what they're talking about and then delve a little bit deeper into that topic.
Well, that's a great idea. That's fantastic. And Jamie, your advice.
I'm gonna also echo what everybody said, but then also going back to just the craziness of the labor market, like your survey results showed. The last 2 years, we're seeing it again going into 2024. It hasn't really changed. And candidates still kind of have the upper hand. So You know, it's about making your organization the best place to work. Like Dawn just said, retention is really important. So the advice I would give is to assess your leaders. Leaders are the number one reason why people will leave a job, you know, in addition to that culture, because it kind of goes hand in hand with each other. You know, looking at your compensation and benefits, are they competitive? Employee engagement, stuff we talked about already. Are you doing those little simple things to make your place of employment a good place to work? Do you have DEI? You know, do you have a DEI committee? And then the other piece of advice I would have, and this is really important to me, and again, I talked about taking a new job with Matera and things that were important to me to take this role. And I will say those things were consistency. So are you consistent with your policies and procedures and how you handle things? Are you transparent? Do you communicate with your teams? Do you keep them in the loop? Do you include them in decision making? All of those things are small but easy things that you can do to make your place a good place to work.
Fantastic. I know we just hit our time, and there's a couple other questions. We will respond to those offline. I just want to thank so much, Lauren. Thank you very much from Tandem HR, Jamie, Human Resources Manager, Matera, Jessica from NGL, Chief Culture and Communication Officers, and Dawn, Director of HR, Royal Printing. Thank you so much for your insights and helping us out. And to everybody that participated, we really appreciate your time today. If you have further questions, feel free to reach out. We will be sending out the slides. We'll be sending out all of the research that we had, the slides on the research, as well as the slides on the webinar. And if you have questions, feel free to reach out to QTI. So everybody have a wonderful day, and thank you so much.